Greetings, my beloved Black people. Welcome to the plight and struggle of Black people in America. Here at the plight and struggle of Black people in America, we're hopeful that we all can get together collectively and think together. Ultimately, we know that Black people united would thrive rather than merely survive in this nation. This nation of these states of America, Black people, we have the oldest history in the history of mankind. So we're in this situation in these states, and we definitely need to know thoroughly the history in this nation of our people and our ancestors and their people and their ancestors. Let's talk about history right here in these states. And you have to wonder why about so many things. And here at the plight and struggle of Black people in America right now, these days, what we're focusing on is why is it that the Black man that created Negro History Week, that turned into Black History Month, this brother is known by less than 2% of Black people in this nation. Why is that? Why is that? Well, there's probably several reasons. Let's just talk about the brother that did create Negro History Week, that did turn into Black History Month. And let's talk about him and let's see maybe why some people may not want this Black man to be known by Black people. Anyway, the brother's name was Carter G. Woodson. Carter Godwin Woodson. This brother, his parents were formerly slaves in this nation. So without question, this brother is definitely one of our premier foundational Black Americans here in this nation. Carter G. Woodson. Now, Carter G. Woodson, this brother, being the offspring of former slaves, became the second Black man ever to graduate. First Black man to ever have been a child of enslaved people and get a PhD from any university, anywhere. Okay. Carter G. Woodson is the second Black man to get a PhD in American history from Harvard University, second to W.B. Du Bois, who was the first Black man to get a PhD from Harvard. And again, Carter G. Woodson is the second Black man to get a PhD from Harvard, but he's the only Black man from enslaved people in this nation to get a PhD from anywhere, as I said. Now, Carter G. Woodson, this brother was born in 1875. Okay. Now, this brother, he did a lot of things. Read his book, the book on his life, biography, autobiography, whichever one you can locate. He had to do a lot of things to be able to get the funding and what have you to even be able to achieve this monumental task of getting a PhD from Harvard University. Okay, so this brother in 1926, at the age of 51, decided, now our people need to know about our history because he knows we have a great history, the oldest history, and our history begins centuries before the part that started in the United States or these states of this nation. So Carter G. Woodson realized that, say, our people need to know about our greatness, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that they know. Okay, so we're talking about 1927 in this nation. Okay, now can you imagine the other people's ancestors and how they felt about this Black man making such bold accomplishments, as well as going further and saying, my people are going to know about this stuff because I'm going to make sure it happens. Can you imagine how some of those ancestors of the other people felt at that time and the nerve that they thought this brother had? Well, see, I hear a lot of times people will say that those Caucasians know our history better than us. Well, okay, let me change that phrase so you can know. Those Caucasians know our history better than some of us. I promise you, not all of us. You feel me? Anyway. Carter G. Woodson came up with a great idea. He made it happen. And I'm sure some of those other men from the other side felt like, you black so-and-so and so-and-so. Okay. And I'm sure some of them plotted and planned. And see, a lot of times dealing with those people, they get deep with it. You know what I'm talking about? I could easily imagine that some of those fellas said, okay, you got that Carter G, but I tell you what, sir, I promise you that in 100 years, your own people won't even know who you are, sir. Yeah, but sadly, right now, it's been 96 years already, and less than 2% of black people even know who Carter G. Woodson was. So say, we got to make sure that what those fellas said would happen to Carter G, which looked like it's almost happening, we got to make sure that don't happen. You see, we got different elements and things and people coming at Black History Month wanting to dismantle it. Some of them don't understand the magnitude of what's going on. I think some of them do, but are just bought and paid for. But for the black masses, now we need to know. And we got to put Carter G. Woodson's name out there the same way we did Malcolm X. You feel me? Because this brother loved our people, sacrificed, suffered, did all that he could to make sure our people knew about the greatness of our people. And we're going to just let this brother not be recognized and known to our people? Say, we got to do better than that. And I know we will. That's one thing I do. Because I know about our people, the history of our people here and beyond. But let's talk about our people's history here in these states that we built and primarily created. But let's talk about different eras. Let's talk about the era of Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson, along with brothers like Marcus Garvey and W.B. Du Bois, they were born in the 19th century, which is the 1800s. Okay, but see, you're going to recognize that because of the successes of those three brothers, but not solely on that, don't get me wrong, hate of our people by other people is the primary problem, for sure. But anyway, you talk about knowing our history and they study our history. Yes, they do. And they study it, unfortunately, better than too many of us, but not all of us, I promise you. I'm not the only one that know our story. There's a lot of black people that know what time it is for black people, but they're not going to get the mass media attention that will help make the difference for our people. So black people only going to rise when we make ourselves rise, because we have the resources, we have everything that we need except that primary ingredient of unity, but we are going to acquire that also. Okay, so let's talk about the era of Carter G. Woodson, Marcus Garvey, and W.B. Du Bois. But watch, it's going to be so interesting how that's going to tie into the era of Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. Black people, we're going to get it together. I'm certain of it. I'm certain of it. Okay, let's talk about Marcus Garvey for a second. Marcus Garvey came to the United States from Jamaica. Marcus Garvey came to the United States from Jamaica at the invitation of Booker T. Washington. Unfortunately, Booker T. Washington had passed before Marcus Garvey had made it to the United States. Marcus Garvey made it to the United States in 1916, okay? And he was here until he was deported in 1922. But what's so amazing, that means the brother was here free in America from 1916 to 1927. I'm sorry, he was free here in America from 1960 to 1922. Okay, so 1922 to 1927, they had him in prison. Then when they got out, they deported him back to Jamaica. But the point that I want to make, okay, first of all, this brother Marcus Garvey came to America and created an organization called the UNIA, United Negro Improvement Association. Okay. This brother built this organization to at least 5 million strong. And to look at the fact this brother was here free from 1916 to 1922 says that this brother in 6 years built a black nation within this nation that was for black people, well-being and betterment everywhere. And that's pretty amazing. So we're talking about the era of Carter G. Woodson, Marcus Garvey, and W.B. Du Bois, which these brothers were born in the 19th century, which is in the 1800s. Okay, and we need to research these people. All these people I'm going to talk to you about, research these people. You'll learn a lot. If you already not knowing very much, you'll learn a lot when you research these people that I'm going to speak about. Okay, now, W. Du Bois, this fella, now, like I said, he was the first black man to get a PhD from Harvard University. This brother also was one of the founding members of the NAACP. He was one of the founding formers, the makers of what's called the Talented 10th. What this Talented 10th was said to be at that time was, it was supposed to be the most talented 10% of our black population was supposedly going to reach back to the other 90% and help pull them up to the standards of that 10% that they call the talented 10th. And he's done various other things. Okay, but the point that I'm really making and getting at is that when they saw the talents and the abilities of these three black men, Carter G. Woodson, Marcus Garvey, and W.B. Du Bois, which, like I said, they were born in the 19th century, which was the 1800s, and their lives went over into the 20th century, which is the 1900s, which is the same era that brothers Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King were in. Now, check this out. This is what I see. Now, those other folks, they saw what Marcus did, what Marcus did, what W.B. Du Bois did, and what Carter G. Woodson did. Now, see, I suspect what happened was when they saw those brothers doing their thing back in the 19th century, they took it lightly. And they felt like, whatever, them brothers, they ain't ready to do nothing. But by the time that the 20th century came and they saw how powerful and impactful those brothers was from that era, Marcus Garvey, W.B. Du Bois, and Carter G. Woodson, when it came to the time in the 20th century, when they saw what was happening with Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr., see, they stopped underestimating after they saw what Carter G and them other brothers did during that time. See, then they're like, oh, say, we can't underestimate no more. And sadly, they didn't, and they murdered 3 of our brothers. Another person you definitely want to research is this fella, J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover. I don't know why I'm tongue twisted on this fella. J. Edgar Hoover. He was the FBI director, and he led various attacks on various black leaders. And this fella, I saw and heard this fella say this myself. This fella said that law and justice is coincidental to power and control. Something to that impact, something to that effect. But you need to look up this fellow, J. Edgar Hoover. Look up Marcus Garvey. Look up Carter G. Woodson. Look up W. Du Bois. Research these people, as well as look up Medgar Evers out of Mississippi, Malcolm X out of New York in the end, and Martin Luther King from Montgomery, Alabama. So definitely look those people up and research them, because you're going to find out that when these other people realize the power of Black people and Black men doing their thing, sadly, they murdered Medgar Evers. And what they saw is this, that if the brothers are around long enough, they're going to come up with a solution and an answer. You see what I'm saying? Because Marcus Garvey lived to be 52. Carter G. Woodson lived to be 74. And W.B. Du Bois lived to be 95. And if you notice, our brothers, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, they were all murdered in their 30s, you see. And some of us didn't even know that they saw what Marcus Garvey did. They saw what Carter G. Woodson did. They saw what W.B. Du Bois did, which showed them what Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King could do because of what they have already done themselves as well. And so, Black people, we need to know our story. We need to know their story. And even though our history is the oldest history in humankind, we, I believe, need to focus in our history right here in these so-called United States and make sure we know the history and make sure that we focus on what brings Black people together, because Black people united collectively have the resources to be self-sufficient. And then at that time, Black people will thrive rather than merely survive. Okay. Now, we talk about 100 years and $100 and 100 whatever. What's so ironic? There's many ironies, I'm sure, but there's one particular aspect of irony is you have W.B. Du Bois, which is the oldest of the three from the era of the 19th century of Marcus Garvey and Carter G. and W.B. Du Bois. Okay, W. Du Bois is the oldest of those. Okay, now we go over to the era of Brother Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King. That's in the 20th century, and look at the fact that Medgar was murdered first, Malcolm X was murdered second, and Martin Luther King was murdered third. Okay, W. Du Bois is the oldest of the three from the other era, but guess what? W. Du Bois was born in 1868. Well, Martin Luther King was murdered in 1968, 100 years later. So that was like they closed the book on it, starting from W.B. Du Bois to Martin Luther King. 6 giants, from W. Du Bois to Carter G. Woodson, to Marcus Garvey, to Malcolm X, to Medgar Evers, to Martin Luther King Jr. 6 giants. And they murdered the last 3 because they saw where we were headed. Now, don't get me wrong, we're still headed there because we can't be stopped. Sadly, we definitely are slowed down so much. So many ways. That part is so unfortunate, but I believe because we at the plight and struggle of Black people in America, we know that Black people, we're going to get our act together because we could be slowed down, but we cannot and never will ever be stopped. Love you, Black people.